I'm going to go over here and get an easy pass and make this an easy O point.
That is a fascinating dynamic. Those two college teammates at Brown University, great friends going head to head. John has had the bragging rights in recent memory in the AUDL level, but it only takes one game to change the narrative for a long time. We talked about 2018 when the New York Empire had never beaten the Toronto Rush before, and no one expected that New York team to go to Toronto and take down that perennial East Division champ. And of course, you think about that as a turning point in the history of the league with how great New York has been since. Undefeated in 2019, undefeated last year, 3 trips to the title game, 2 titles. And yet, none of that matters now. This is about the present and DC trying to write their great moment for the record books.
Yeah, well, I mean, New York's theme this season has been chasing history. And in fact, in truth, as you say, Evan, DC is truly the one who is chasing history.
High stall count, Weinberg launches, Oliver Chartok reads it beautifully. And Weinberg with a backhand missile.
DC was running their zone 3-3-1. They were trying to junk up the middle of the field, and they were doing a good job of it. And as a result, all of the downfield defenders are saying, all right, we've got help, so we're going to force them deep. But Weinberg was able to find the soft spot in the middle of the field and get the throw off, and once it got off, it was going to be an easy goal. This is what the defense is designed to do. The help is supposed to come from other handler defenders in that front line, and it wasn't there, so Weinberg had an easy throw choice.
Oliver Chartok came in on the O-line basically when Weinberg was out and filled that role admirably. Now they're collaborating together.
Yeah, there was a point where he had played 50 O points and 50 D points. And then he played 4 straight games strictly on the O-line, call him an O-line player. Then the last 2 games, he did play a little more on the D-line as Weinberg came back, but to call him a D-line player this year is a bit unfair to him. He has been an O-line player for the New York Empire in 2023.
This Ben Katz, Ben Ort matchup is fascinating. And Katz just knows how to be a really smart defender and force players to go where he can be successful and plays for help. Normally, Ben Ort being a big, deep receiver, Ben Katz is kind of coaxing him back in the handler space. Hey, don't you want to be a thrower?
DC at its best when they're working underneath.
They're working underneath right now against this forced middle defense, so New York is just trying to see nothing down the sideline, but this one's going to work out.
And it's almost off the hands of Maltz in the end zone. It did look like it was going to work out. It was right there. Second break chance for New York. Last time it was Brownlee to Davis on a huck. This time it's Davis to Brownlee in the under. Charlie Hoppe is standing right next to the official, and he calls for the timeout. Marquez like, did you see that hammer? Timeout New York, 4:44 left in this first half. New York has led by as many as 2. DC has never led, but it has been tight and intense throughout. Timeout on the field. Empire Disc when we return.
When the prize is our future, every day is a match of our lives. I am Pilo Gomez. In all my years of playing around the world, I have never seen a brighter soul than Kiara's. Watching her move with such power and grace, you would never know what it took for her to be here. Together with her world-class team, Kiara triumphed over the...
All right, Empire took the timeout. Elliot Chartok initiates with a nice rising backhand for Solomon Rushmeyer-Bailey. Empire seeking their second break of the night. Their first was on their very first D point. And the D-line converted it themselves. This time the timeout call brings the offense on the field. There's a collision in the middle. Bloodgood was calling for a whistle. We play on. Those college teammates, Yacht and Oscar, such great chemistry. Now Rushmeyer Bailey breaks the mark and hits Oliver Chartok, who just continues to make plays for New York. And look at Jeff Babbitt with a big smile on his face. That's heartwarming to see, because as any Ultimate fan would love to see him on the field.
But that's one of the things that Jeff does preach, is that you want your offense in the end zone to be as horizontal as possible. You think that, yeah, just one throw away, you're one throw away, you're one throw away, but stretch out that defense, go side to sideline. And I'm noticing, too, that Oscar quiet for a few points there at the end of the first, and throughout much of the second quarter, with Cranston doing a much better job just forcing him not only out, but almost into the cuts of other teammates. But once it was time, Jack said, okay, it's Oscar's time, and I think that is what the privilege of having both Oscar and Jack in your end zone offense is, that you can say, it's my turn, I'm the guy, I'm going to be the one to take over here, and Oscar did that on that play near the end zone.
Brian, when you coached the Empire in 2019, would you think of certain possessions as, okay, it's this guy's turn, and now it's this other guy's turn?
No, I mean, the luxury you have with all of those players is, like, the way the turn kind of comes back is organic, right? Like, Oscar can sense getting to the right position, and you have isolation. What we're seeing here, too, right, is Oscar and Jack be involved in those, but Elliot Chartok, Oliver Chartok, and Saul Rushmeyer Bailey doing such a great job of running that. That was Chartok's well-timed cut with a great break from Rushmeyer Bailey that keeps this offense humming. I think that's what makes Jack great, though, is he has that sense.
Yeah.
When it's a bigger moment, when he needs to go every other, and he conserves his energy for those moments.
Ort senses the double team, hits Malks, who finishes it with the forehand for Tyler Monroe.
New York's always about the risk in the end zone, especially with Ben Katz going for the double team. And it's feast or famine at those points, especially against this DC team that's so good at breaking the mark.
Would y'all agree that the absence of Jeff Babbitt and John Lithio have been perhaps felt a little bit more on the New York D-line so far tonight? Because the D-line hasn't had Ben Yacht. It hasn't had Oliver Chartok, who's had to move back over to O as well.
Certainly, Ben Yacht does a great job, and they're going to have to make an adjustment on that D-line. But, Dan, you said it. This is a team with the best defensive depth in the league. And so if there's any team ready to absorb it, it's been the New York D-line.
Yeah, that just means that Antoine, Marquez, Jeff Holmes, some of those big athletes, those big bodies, if anything, they're showcasing a little bit more of how they can take on that high top-level offense.
Ben Yacht versus Moussa Ja. And it's Yacht, shy of the goal line, needing help, and a quick dish. Beautiful deep shot, and Weinberg finishes it off.
Yeah, big plays, Evan. That's what happens with a big man, making big plays, and Jack kind of let him get that out space, and he took it. And Jack, again, with that long backhand. You think of Jack with that perfect playoff flick, sure, but it's those backhands up to that space that's so dangerous that Yacht knows how to read those on the letter.
If you ask Jack about this throw, I think he's going to say he shorted it a little bit, but thankfully he had a 6'6" receiver that could go up and get it. And that's usually a throw we see Ryan Oscar make. That cross-field shot is one of those things where, if you're looking at it from the opposing viewpoint, you know, what is Darryl Stanley going to say defensively, saying, we have to keep those coming because it's so hard to get a block in New York, we'll take the risk and see what happens, or we have to defend that better and not let Ben Yacht get open deep. I think that's in the in-between space there where you're saying, we kind of got to live with that. New York's really good. We're going to have to try to find a way to get a turnover. But Ben Yacht is so good at winning in the air.
A floater from McDonald that Nissen able to keep with his left hand. Closing in on 2 minutes to play in this first half.
It's so interesting watching Andrew Roy because I don't remember the last time he's hucked it. And so as a mark, you know he's not looking deep. You know as a cutter defender, he's not looking deep. But he still finds ways to break the mark, use his length, throw it around, do shimmies, whatever it takes. And then Rowan, of course, is bringing out his tricks.
To your point, Brian, he's only launched 2 hucks all year. He did complete them both. Rowan McDonald not shy about hucking. Ben Ort, can he get there? No, he cannot. A little too much sizzle on that deep shot from Rowan.
Ben Katz has been sitting underneath Ben Ort in the deep space saying, hey, it's open, go ahead and try get it.
Before Ben Katz can initiate timeout taken, the second and final timeout of the half for the New York Empire. And Jeff Babbitt unable to play tonight, but man, having him be in sideline support is a special thing. You know, Charlie Hoppus brought the entire team in and told him that Jeff Babbitt wasn't going to play, and basically everyone on the team had a hug. And without Babbitt, Jack Williams, or with Babbitt, Jack Williams making plays in the playoffs.
Jack Williams, I mean, we expected it. This is why we put him as, you know, we talked about playoff Jack, we put him as the player to watch for New York because it just keeps happening. In the playoffs, he raises his game. And that's one of the things, if you're New York, how do you feel when Jeff Babbitt goes down? How do you feel when John Lithia goes down? I still say pretty confident because I got Ryan Oscar, Ben Yacht, and Jack Williams.
And when you talk about basically the Jeff Babbitt butterfly effect, this timeout is part of that butterfly effect because you don't have Yacht on that D-line. With Yacht on the D-line, with that, especially that D-line one, if you want to call it that, Charlie Hoppus and Anthony Nunez all year have trusted that D-line to get breaks from that position. And without Jeff Babbitt, or without, I should say, without Ben Yacht on that D-line, you see the change.
I think that's a great point. It is also late in the second quarter, and they can't take that extra time out with them.
Also, yeah, getting Ben Yacht on for potentially a buzzer-beating situation, pretty smart.
Or you could just score quickly and get it back again.
Yacht looking for Williams this time, and it eludes Holland by the slimmest of margins. And then Holland and Weinberg collide. And Troy's arguing that Weinberg ran into him, but it's going to go against DC. Clock stops, just under a minute left in the half. Williams, Holland throwing his body around, and that throw finds the open man, and it's Elliot Chartok who whiffs on the kick spike, but he didn't get penalized for that.
It looked like they was playing a game of basketball out there, and everybody was trying to box out for the rebound right in front of the end zone. And Jack finds the space to end it. But you see bodies walking the floor. You see Jasper Tom there with Cranston and Troy Holland, I think protecting the paint almost.
Yeah, without John Lithia, who was probably the most prolific basketball player in the Empire, they're not going to win a basketball game tonight. But yes, to your point, it also puts the refs in a precarious position. At what point do you call any of those little bumps and bruises and fouls and the like? And I think one of the underrated things about Jack, one of the questions I asked, what does he do poorly? One of the things he does well as we continue to talk about him, is he takes contact. So often you watch a game and I say, well, if you or I were playing, I'm calling half of the times that the opponent has touched me in the way that he's constantly getting jersey pulls and hands, and he just plays right through it and never gets out of rhythm, completely unrattled. It's certainly an underrated part of his game.
Final minute. DC just got broken for the third time. New York with just 2 turnovers in this first half, and one of them was intercepted for a Callahan. Healy swings it for Ort, moving it for Malks. It's one of those situations, if you're DC, do you just try to score? Do you try to score with 5-10 seconds or less remaining?
So many teams try to do that and milk the clock and they don't end up scoring. You got to score here and hope your defense can hold.
Floater testing Randolph, but Roy rises to the occasion. Now time's winding down, and the sense of urgency increases. Blade to the back of the end zone, and it's caught by Johnny Malks. Marquez Brownlee was right there, and it knuckled past him. 3 seconds left on the clock.
Cannot be understated, the margins between New York and DC, and this is another play that, yes, it goes off of Marquez. He got not enough on it. It's one of those where it hits your palm instead of getting your fingers and closing it around the disc. Yeah, Marquez certainly wants that back, but Maltz also in the right spot when he needed to be.
Chaos at the end of the quarters. It's DC New York way every single game. We're going to see something like this over and over again. I mean, we might get it 2 more times.
It's been about a goal per minute. We got 3 seconds left for DC to worry about here. Williams, can he get it the full 85 yards of the field? Not into the wind. And that'll do it for the end of the first half. Got the catch, but the buzzer has sounded. Empire won the first quarter 7-6. They win the second quarter 6-5. Only 7 total turnovers in the first half. New York gets 3 breaks and 3 chances. DC officially 1 break, but because it was a Callahan, it's not registering on the stat sheet as a break, but that was the only break for the Breeze. Of course, the big turning point was when they had the chance to take the lead. Darryl took the timeout after the Troy Holland block, and it did not work out for DC. The 2-goal lead for New York at the break.
Been a clean game and been a high, fast-paced scoring game, which is unlike most New York DC outings. We're usually seeing games that are in the high teens, low 20s. Here we're on pace for a 26-22 game. Both offenses are clicking. Defenses at halftime have to make some adjustments.
Let's go down to the field. Tony Leonardo with Daryl Stanley.
Hey, I'm with Coach Daryl Stanley. Daryl, big boost to end the half there. You got that big buzzer beater. How's that feel for your team?
It's good. I mean, it makes those like possessions feel a little bit different, right? Obviously, New York's done a really good job of getting some breaks, and getting back at the end there, it's like kind of like a free one in a weird way. So I'm really happy we got that much.
Speaking of breaks, you got 1 break so far in this first half. What's the change for the second half?
I mean, we got to bring more pressure. I think there are a lot of like safety valves that New York is utilizing, and if we don't like take those away, I think they're going to have a lot of success, and they've shown that. It's a very systemic team. They don't turn it over, so we're going to have to make them make throws they don't want. So far, some strong throwing right now. I think they know the wind a little bit better than we do, but our boys are out there to figure that out.
Yeah, right on. What's your message to the team at the half?
Honestly, it's that we're like close, you know? It's just that like I think there's 1 or 2 tweaks. Hey, I don't think it's going to be like a, hey, 3 or 4 things going wrong. It's more like 1 thing's kind of going wrong. We got to find what that is and make sure that we get that right, and I think we will.
Yeah, right on. Thanks, Coach. Good luck.
Thank you.
Since Daryl Stanley became the coach of the Breeze in 2017, the franchise has gone 56, 26, and 1. Of course, beating New York, especially in recent years, has been the bugaboo. Halftime in the 2023 East Division Final, New York 13, DC 11.
Responsible business is now sort of an essential facet of the future economy. Like, I'm talking like every business needs to start thinking about their social and especially environmental impact.
And if we look at all the problems that we have in the world today, they're not going to be solved by our governments and the not-for-profits. I think business has a really big role to kind of play. B Corp really kind of helps companies through the certification really understand that and kind of dig into their impact further.
Manta masks will help you fall asleep anywhere. Manta Sleep, the official sleep mask of the New York Empire.
When the prize is our future, every day is a match of our lives. I am Pilo Gomez. In all my years of playing around the world, I have never seen a brighter soul than Kiara's. Watching her move with such power and grace, you would never know what it took for her to be here. Together with her world-class team, Kiara triumphed over a rare cancer that nearly stole her future as a dancer. She is an inspiration for any challenge we face. When we unite around one purpose and drive towards one goal, that is when we win.
We've talked about how the New York Empire might just be the best team in AUDL history. That has to be one of the best halves in the history of the franchise. 8 for 8 on Hux, 8 for 8 in the red zone. Let's go down to Tony Leonardo with Anthony Nunez.
Thanks, Evan. Anthony, 8 for 8 on Hux. He had a great first half, almost perfect. How do you maintain that in the second half?
I mean, you know, we just have to keep chiseling on the in cuts. And then when they give us those deep shots, we're going to take them. We have some of the best throwers on the field right now on offense. You know, Jack is cooking right now. We were seeing playoff Jack. And, you know, Oscar is one of the best throwers in the world. So you got to let them throw.
What kind of adjustments are you going to make on defense? We haven't seen you get takeaways necessarily. They're just mistakes from DC. Are we seeing anything different in the second half?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think our defense is actually getting those takeaways because of the pressure that they're creating. It's creating the mistakes that they're making them come out wide and throw wide. And in this wind, it's a little bit tougher for them to hit those arounds. So we're pressuring them pretty hard. I mean, the most important thing right now is just keeping our D legs fresh and making their O legs feel tired and just exhausted. So we just got to convert.
Last question. What's it feel like with this crowd just boosting you out of here?
Oh, I mean, the crowd is ridiculously amazing. With the drum line going on in the background, you've got everything going on. This is the atmosphere we want. This is the playoffs. And we've been here before, and we want to continue to be here. So,
thanks, Coach. Good luck in the second half.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Anthony. It's a 13-11 lead for the New York Empire as New York 2 quarters away from returning to championship weekend. The pursuit of history continues. Second half from New Rochelle on the other side of the break.
What do you think, son? 8 or 9?
For that, I'd use this.
Manscaped, huh? Son, back in my day, ladies loved grass in the fairways.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. It's not for down there. The beard hedger's for your face.
Oh, really?
The Beard Hedger features a rotary zoom wheel that provides 20 precision settings with just one guard.
Grip it and trim it, baby.
Introducing the Beard Hedger. Order today at manscaped.com.
My first 2 years of college, I threw every single day. Of course you want to be a champion. Of course you want to be working towards winning titles.
Be happy, but never satisfied.
Better than ever.
Second year in a row that DC and New York meet here at Focina Field to decide the East Division champion. And a year ago, it looked like New York was going to cruise. I mean, the Empire seized control of this game, gentlemen, and until late in the third quarter, it was really kind of all New York, and then momentum shifted. DC got a couple of blocks, and all of a sudden, it got really intense. And it all led to the wild finish with Jack Williams sending it. Ben Yant on his 30th birthday being the hero.
His first buzzer beater. He hasn't caught one before, and that's quite a way to end the game. Send yourselves a championship weekend, but I expect this game to get tight again, right? It would be a surprise if DC did not have something up their sleeve defensively to create some chaos.
Dan, you think about 2 years ago, too. It was a buzzer beater that sent the Empire to championship weekend. Jack Williams threw it 2 years ago against Atlanta. It was Ryan Osgar who caught it, just adding to the Hustle's continued misery.
Yeah, it seems like we're a broken record that when the lights get brightest, you know the names, you know the players, and they continue to make the plays. That is why this team is 27-0. That's why this team has not lost here since 2018. That's why the Empire are flirting with those words like dynasty, and that's why both these teams fully understand that, no, this is not necessarily the championship game. There's still 2 more games to go and plenty of teams and Salt Lake and things like that looming. But both these teams know the stakes that the winner of this game could certainly, or should certainly, I'd say, be the favorite at championship weekend.
Second half underway. Empire with 27 consecutive wins overall, 28 straight wins at home. They're 57-4 since the start of the 2018 playoffs.
And they're not waiting. Ben Ort is out there guarding Elliot Chartok. They're not waiting to throw whatever they can at this New York offense.
Do you like that?
You got to try something. You didn't do enough in the first half. Whatever it takes. Get some energy out there. You just have to get one block to turn the tide in this game.
Only 2 first-half turnovers for New York. One was the centering pass from Rushmeyer Bailey that was caught for a Callahan. The other was a Benyat throwaway intercepted by Holland. But goodness, New York extends the lead to 3, marching it down the field, and Charles Weinberg continues to be super solid downfield for the Empire O.
Yeah, I think the MVPs of that play, Royce Meyer-Bailey, that matchup with Jasper Tom. Now, usually it's Luke Rayfuse, who didn't even make the 20 tonight, who, yeah, he gets really physical with Royce Meyer-Bailey, and even the last game, week 10 at home, Royce Meyer-Bailey says, yeah, Luke took a little bit out of me, wasn't too happy with the physicality in that game, but I worked through it. And then the same thing with Jasper Tom, just being really physical with him. And like I mentioned with Jack as well, the way that New York plays through all that little physicality that is not called, that tells you that once that offense is flowing and working through it, they're not going to be phased.
Yeah, they're not complaining to the refs because they prepared for it. It was a point in practice this week saying, we know Jasper Tom's going to come with physicality. We have to be ready for it and be prepared. So they had their defenders prep the offense and get up in their grill. And that's something to learn how to play against. Physicality is a double-edged sword. It can sometimes work, but then it leaves you in a bad position, and Rushmeyer Bailey knows how to take advantage of that.
Bredenkamp awful close to that Callahan. He got his first in his entire career against Colorado. Almost a second there.
That was a fourth quarter Callahan against the Summit that basically finished off Colorado. Charlie Hoppus did say before the game, Empire had their best practice of the year on Wednesday. Deep shot gonna be caught by Healy. Awkward deep look. And oh my goodness, Ben Katz rejects it, and Healy unable to catch the ricochet. And that was just an awkward looking sequence from the Breeds.
He knows what you're going to throw before you decide to throw it. And he read the play very well and got up before the throw went off, and that's just what he does. He's crafty, he finds ways to make plays even when out of position.
Davis for Marquez Brownlee. Dangerous hammer. And Davis comes up with it. Healy lurking.
How did he get that? It looked like Healy had the inside track and Antoine took it off of his back.
Wide open, Bredenkamp not in yet. And New York breaks again. John Randolph with the emphatic spike.
I'm excited to watch the Ben Katz block again because I want to tell you what he does so well. I watch what, especially against Toronto, when he's against younger players because he reads them so well. But, of course, Empire on the break, they're not going to call timeout in this situation because even though they were in the same spot, it's so early. But, yeah, so watch what Ben Katz does so well here. When he gets close, he takes that step with his right foot backwards. And once you raise your hips up a little bit, he puts both his hands in the air with you. He's done this now, well, that was just one hand, but he's done this so many times in the last few seasons where right when, again, their hips come up and their body changes, he's expecting, because he is only, what, 5'8" and a half, I want to be nice, 5'9" maybe, that once you lift it up, I know he's about our height, and so once you lift up for that high release, then he comes with you with that big mitt, and yeah, he watches the eyes, reads it so well. If you're a young player, watch how Ben Katz marks somebody, because if you're 6'5" and figure out how to do that, you are an instant block every other time.
He just reads the play so well, and offensive throwers that go, what, this 5'9" guy is going to get in my grill and block me, and then it happens and they go, well, he got me. He does it.
It's been said that he sees the future out there. This is a must-score possession, it feels like, for DC. Facing their largest deficit of the night. New York has all the momentum right now. Andrew Roy back to Christian Boxley. Swings it for Johnny Malks. Oh my. Narrowly sneaks past Aloro, and then another precarious toss that Malks puts away for the goal. DC a little creaky to begin this third quarter.
Everything they do on offense is in close quarters. They're just used to it. They do this over and over again. They throw these quick, short passes that require excellent timing. And they do a good job of not getting broken many times in a row and just keeping themselves in it. But you're not wrong, Evan. This is a game where it could feel like it could get blown open by New York. And it's kind of shocking, right? Again, Jeff Babbitt's down, John Lithio is out. And here the New York D-line with all of its depth is starting to just put a stranglehold on this DC squad. But as in every other matchup, as soon as we started to feel that way, that New York had it in the bag, something has changed in the past.
This New York team is on pace to have the fewest turnovers in a game in AUDL history. Could this be the third turn? No. A honing missile on that bomb from Ryan Osgard of Ben Yacht.
Beautiful timing between Osgar and Yacht. And it reminds you, you sometimes forget that he's a two-time MVP. A lot of what he did for his assists, his goals, he's also the first player, that being Yacht, in AUDL history with 300 goals, 300 assists, and that doesn't happen by accident. Reading it well, understanding that for Osgar, the edge he puts on that disc, you watch how consistent those are. It doesn't even matter if it was 50 or 60 yards. He knows where that disc is going to break in a way that Musa Jah, because he's not thrown to by Ryan Osgar over the course of half a decade, almost a decade, he doesn't understanding where that disc is going to break the way Yacht does on those Osgar backhands.
It's already tough enough to stop Ben Yacht, and it's impossible to stop him when the throw is absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Ryan Osgar has been fitting them into tight spaces tonight. Sometimes we've seen Ryan Osgar have a few turnovers and some ambitious shots in different games, but tonight we're getting his best game.
Ben Yacht was over 300 yards receiving in the first half alone. Now over 400 yards as this deep shot testing Katz. Can Malks make a play on it? No, sir. And you could almost count that as Katz's third D of the night.
And I would argue that that might be their worst turnover so far. I mean, even the last point, yeah, they had to work for it, but scoring was absolutely essential. But to turn it over in that way, when you're down by 4, I don't know. It just felt like that was a Rubicon moment for DC.
Ben Katz is in their head. He's been in deep space the last 2 turnovers, where the first one, he got the hand block. Before that, he was reading the play before the receiver was. He almost got thrown to, and again, Ben Katz knows what's going to happen before it does.
Empire take the timeout. Let's take a look at Ben Katz there. Just reading the play, and I mean, he was the deep there. And the Breeze, as you said, just throwing it away.
Yeah, he reads the play so incredibly well. He knows what's going to happen. He ignores the receiver going underneath. He doesn't care if anybody else is going to pick him up. He says, he's going to gain 5 yards. If my guy goes and gets it, somebody else will figure it out.
And all of this through the 3 surgeries he's endured for thyroid cancer, battling through different radiation treatments. It's an unbelievable story. Ben was gracious to share it with me in the preseason. And thinking about it this morning, I reread that story just to put it in perspective again. Everything that he has been through, and he's still making plays in the biggest game of the year for the best team in the world.
Well, that's how you fit all these egos, right? Ben Katz's top shelf temperament. His temperament is never rattled. He's always the same. In every game, in every situation, it does not change.
Empire led by 2 at the half. They have dominated so far here in the third quarter. looking to make it a 4-1 run to begin this third period, trying to stretch the lead to 5. Bit of a dangerous bid, some contact that we play on. McCutcheon bouncing on Osgar. Williams stumbled, forcing the crossfield swing instead, and Elliot Chartok rises up. His brother Oliver finds Ben Yacht. I mean, look, DC's defensive pressure is not bad, and yet New York just continues to slice and dice this great DC defense as if it's nothing.
It seems like everybody gets their turn, right? Charles Weinberg had his point. This certainly is Elliot Chartok's point. The one you look back and say, well, there was that moment we were up by 4, and then Elliot Chartok was the one who had that big catch to keep possession when you notice before this play, Jack had fallen down. Merriman and Yacht had both fallen down behind the play as well, so everybody's slipping and sliding. And Elliot, he took the turn, managed to get that big paw up there, and then, I mean, while I do want to credit Elliot for being open and making that cut, I mean, this Jack, though, was pretty nasty, too, to float that into space like that.
Yeah, it was okay. It was okay, and in terms of Jack's throws, we'll give it a, 5. No, it was a great throw to space. Jack does an incredible job in that way. DC's up in the physicality. It's been that way for, almost a quarter. But they have not been able to figure out their matchups or whatever their scheme is to slow New York down.
There have been over 1,000 games in the history of the AUDL. The fewest turnovers ever in a 48-minute game that wasn't shortened by weather is 6. Atlanta had a 6-turnover game against Pittsburgh. San Diego had a 6-turnover game against the Spiders. The postseason record is 7, done at New York's expense by the Flyers in the 2021 championship game. But this Empire team chasing history, doing it tonight. Deep shot from Monroe, and he's in. Malks the assist, Monroe the score, and the Breeze are back within 4.
Great throw by Johnny Malks. Just a really nice around flick against this forced middle. New York is trying to take away everything down the sidelines. They're trying to force and funnel DC's in the middle of the field, and that's where we've seen the turnovers come from with Ben Katz lurking in the deep space. But here Johnny is able to take advantage, and he gets the throw off just in time before Matt Stevens gets there. And that's a tough place for Ryan Holmes to play, because that's not bad defense. He's in the proximity. This is just a better throw.
Brian, at the top of the show, I asked you to put yourself in Darryl Stanley's mind as the DC Breeze coach. I mean, you're a defensive guy as well. What can they do?
I think they have to change their matchups radically. I think they have people in different positions. They've got to figure out what they need exactly in certain spots, because, like we talked about earlier, Troy Holland is not going to stop Jack Williams. He is a phenomenal defender. You have to find a way to get a matchup you like in a certain situation against this New York team, because right now you just can't play holistic great defense and expect them to wilt.
I'm not asking you to rag on anybody, but who's the weak link in this Empire O-line right now?
Well, I think that's the hard part. You have a great team offense going on right now. I mean, you're not going to go ahead and win against Ryan and Yacht and Jack. And so you're looking somewhere else to make someone else beat you.
Williams, cross-field, Ben Yacht in stride.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I'm going to call it out. But Kevin Healy switched over for the Yacht matchup, because I think what DC have wanted to do with Yacht is when you look at his historic turnovers, and you remember this, BJ, where does Ben Yacht and Marquez Brownlee turn the disc over? It's on the sideline. Almost always. 85% of their turnovers come from the sideline. And Ben Yacht is refusing to go to the sidelines where they're trying to funnel him into that space. Instead, he's saying, no, I'm going to either be patient, not really get involved, kind of float around like a bumblebee in this deep space, and then when it's my turn, I'm going to sting like a hornet right to the end zone in that deep space the second you find me, as Jack gets checked out by head trainer Ryan Anderson. I mean, Jack on a number of occasions this year have had those little things here and there with his feet trouble and his knee trouble, but I don't know if we should be alarmed or not.
Well, just imagine if he was feeling really good physically, he might have 10 assists. He only has 6. 22 for 22, 6 assists, 2 goals. Meanwhile, Ben Yacht, the first player in the game, over 600 total yards, 462 receiving yards, and 5 goals for Ben Yacht. And DC turns it over again, bobbled and dropped by Jacques Nissen. Ben Katz to pick up for the Empire. And that's the Empire's third turnover of the night.
It feels like that could have been a pure put-away goal for New York to really just cement this game in their hands. And you always wonder when these types of plays happen, what's going to occur after this.
Tony Leonardo letting us know from the sidelines that Jack Williams said, quote, "I'm good."
Yeah, back in Colorado when he took that nasty one in behind, talking to him on the sideline, he just tied his cleat just a little bit tighter. And the tighter he ties those cleats, the better you know he's ready to go. And he always says, too, that whatever pain I'm feeling today, I'll handle that and feel that tomorrow.
Nissen. Pretty good handler defense by Ethan Fortin, forcing the desperation shot up the line, and it's Andrew Roy taking care of it, beating Ryan Drost to the spot.
And Ben Katz, you could see immediately telling Brett Tan how terrific his defense was there. Brett Tan forcing a difficult throw, and Ryan Drost, yeah, a few inches away, but DC also reminding you once again, in those short spaces, they aren't going to be rattled. They're going to continue to find those opportunities. As, yeah, that's just a drop by Nissen there. And that disc we mentioned with the wind. This may not be Montreal, that swirling wind, but the wind here at Facina Field does have a little bit of an extra edge tonight than it usually does.
That was the first time tonight that the Empire had a break opportunity and did not convert on it. They had been 5 for 5 in their break chances.
One of the things that DC has not brought out, and we talked about near the open, John Lithio has been the guy all year in a lot of cases to take on the double teams. We haven't seen a roller pole. We haven't seen the double team trap, which is a tool that most teams in the AUDL have. But I'm betting you that DC doesn't have it because against New York, it's kind of like, why would you do it? They're so big, they're so tall, so capable of getting out of it. It's not something you would necessarily have in the game plan.
Yeah, as memory serves, I believe it was against Montreal. Some physicality there. I told you I mentioned Solomon Royce-Meyer-Bailey after week 10 had said, hey, Luke Rayfuse, I talked to the referees afterwards, a little bit too much physicality. And now that Jasper Tom on Solomon Royce-Meyer-Bailey, again, Sol kind of knew what was coming his way in this game.
I mean, I think that's worth a discussion around an unsportsmanlike penalty.
And that is exactly what's going to happen.
I think, you know, New York's going to relish the physicality in a lot of ways, and there's a certain amount of physicality that's allowed in the game. Bumping shoulders is common, that sort of thing, but that's where we're entering an area where you're getting backpacked, you're getting bit into.
Ruled a common contact foul. Royce-Meyer-Bailey gets the disc back into play for Osgard. And here's Weinberg. Underneath Merriman's mark to Yacht. I mean, New York's had 3 bad throws tonight, but so many difficult throws that have just been right on the money. And in the middle of the field, Jack Williams is shaken up. Athletic trainer Ryan Anderson coming onto the field. Looks kind of similar to what happened maybe to Christian Olsen last night in double overtime. Did not see what happened live. I think we're going to have a wide angle of the replay here to see what happened here with Jack Williams. Middle of your screen, left side, and Tom and Williams collide.
Yeah, it looks like Jack didn't see Jasper in the area. Going through the stack. Hopefully he's okay. I mean, that would be a big blow. That could turn the tide of the game if Jack's out.
They should have given him a warning that we...
Yeah, and certainly consideration, too. We saw Jeff Babbitt, of course, coming on the field to talking to Jack, just making sure he's okay. If anybody knows head injuries and taking a little bit of a whiplash and some knocks, it's Jeff Babbitt. And again, yeah, that's inadvertent contact, the shoulder from Jasper Tom kind of bracing himself for the contact, but Jack had already started his jump cut, had his head and his chin down.
John Randolph on the field for New York. Oscar gets it right back. Under 2 minutes here in this third quarter. DC had a huge flurry to finish the third quarter in last year's East Division title game that really switched the momentum heading into the fourth. And it feels like the Breeze needs something similar tonight. Oscar throws it, and it's incomplete, but we're gonna get interference. Bergeron going into Weinberg. You can see Mike Sanello signaling that you didn't have a play without going through the offensive player. What do y'all think?
I think that's a tough one. He's coming forward to that space at the last second. And Bergeron does come in initially clean and at the end clips the feet. And I think the physicality is just rising really high right now. And the refs have tried to let them play. And this is what you're seeing is DC amp up the physicality. And New York's starting to take exception to it.
And I think that's a real issue, right? It's not one individual play or one individual incident that's happened, but over the course of the last 2 minutes. Now, this is play number 4 that you've now brought into question. And whether you want to, again, try to separate that bias in your mind for these referees, now it compounds upon each other, and it becomes the way that this game has gone. And so you do have to, at some point, put a foot down on something.
And it was ruled an unsportsmanlike on Bergeron. So New York has it on the goal line. Elliot Chartok, lefty backhand, Rushmeyer Bailey bumping with Christian Botsley, and it's a 5-goal Empire lead once again.
They have fought through the physicality all night long, and it just, DC, it's almost like a little bit like death rattles is saying, well, we're down by 5, we got to try something, and we're to play right to the line, and that's the thing in this ref sport. The refs, I think, should have called the first one on Jasper Tom and unsportsmanlike. Cool the things down, set the line of physicality, because that, out of all the plays that happened at that point, that first one, bidding into Sol Rushmeyer Bailey, seemed to be the worst offense of all of them. And that's what's great about this rivalry is you expect some chippiness, you expect even some physicality. But we're entering the time now where it's becoming unsafe for the players.
DC receiving here with under 90 seconds to go. The Breeze will receive to start the fourth. I mean, the best case scenario for DC here kind of feels like you score to get within 4, then maybe you get 1 break in the last minute to get within 3, and then you start the fourth quarter with on offense. And I mean, that's kind of the roadmap for the Breeze, but much easier said than done against this New York team that has only turned the disc over 3 times all night. Big backhand bomb, or looking for Monroe, and he comes up with it, skying Jeff Holm in the end zone. Wow.
Jeff Holm has been sitting underneath Tyler Monroe all game long, just saying, hey, if you're going to put it up there, I'm ready to make a play. And Ben Ord, another throw from him going deep. He puts a lot of air in this one, which allows Holm to get close. But Tymon makes a fantastic catch to end it.
Yeah, Holm had his head turned just a little bit, so Monroe had an inside beat, inside positioning, and when it comes to wide shoulders, going up strong, Tyler Monroe does it better than most in this sport.
That's a tough way to score. You can see it on his face. And he's usually the underneath engine for truck stop. He's usually getting an under, getting the flow started, getting the under, doing a dish. And here, he's been forced to go deep.
4th goal of the night for Monroe. Can DC disrupt New York's flow in these next 38 seconds? Still no Jack Williams on the field. And John Randolph coming underneath was fouled by Troy Holland, who is in disbelief. Now the officials might come together and have a chat. No, it's just going to be a foul on Holland.
The refs have decided that they're going to start calling every little bump here to take control of the game, is what it seems like to me. But that may have been a clean enough D. I think Holland is expecting to not have that call, but it's a response to the physicality that we've seen.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Brian, that if the previous 2 points ago had not happened, that again is the lightest of the fouls that we saw in the last 4 minutes of game time.
No Jeff Babbitt going deep. Peñat was in the backfield, but the deep shot still goes up, and A.J. Merriman knocks it out of bounds as time expires. So DC wins that end of quarter situation, but a tall task in front as the Breeze and Empire take the turn for home. 3 down, 1 to go. New York 12 minutes away from their 28th consecutive win and another championship weekend trip.
Responsible business is now sort of an essential facet of the future economy. Like, I'm talking like every business needs to start thinking about their social and especially environmental impact.
And if we look at all the problems that we have in the world today, they're not going to be solved by our governments and the not-for-profits. I think business has a really big role to kind of play. B Corp really kind of helps companies through the certification really understand that and kind of dig into their impact further.
We go to the fourth quarter here in New York. Empire lead 19-15, and somehow this DC New York rivalry has been orchestrated around 3 Pennsylvania coaches, Hoppus and Nunez for New York, and Daryl Stanley in what could be his final game at the helm of the Empire. How has the Keystone State produced such great ultimate coaches here in this New York-DC rivalry?
Well, they're all passionate. They've worked together before in certain situations, and I think that for Hoppus and Nunez, they've done a great job of building this team environment to keep everybody tight-knit on the Empire. For Daryl, he's been a friend, he's been a foe to me. He's an excellent coach who has grown in so many ways and just had an impact on his community. Just the presence he has to be in a huddle with him and his energy that he can bring to every single practice and every single game, it's a sight to see.
Yeah, the impact that Daryl has had in both the Philadelphia and the DC Ultimate community is just absurdly impressive in a way that before Daryl Stanley, Philly and DC were known as one thing, and I think they're going to be known as something different here in the new decades.
The journey of a million miles begins with a single step.
And Evan, I must say though, Anthony might take a little exception. He is Jersey Ultimate through and through. Yeah. Helps out a little bit with Philadelphia, but
that's fair.
We can say the Delaware Valley. I think that's probably the best way to.
That's a point well taken. Anthony, one of the youth coaching leaders in Jersey for a long, long time. Thomas Edmonds getting an 0 point here, as the first step for a 4-point comeback is just to hold, and the Breeze do that in exactly 60 seconds, cutting the deficit down to 3 with 11 minutes to go. Can they get 3 more turns from New York? That end of quarter turn was just the 4th of the night, a record-breaking night potentially for the Empire.
You hear it's Johnny Malks working through the forced middle. Thomas Edmonds reads it beautifully. It's been a forced middle since the end of the first half for New York. Their defense, again, taking away the sidelines. And that's going to leave certain shots open. We've been seeing them more and more. We see DC starting to get used to it. And you talked about it. You know, we're going to take a look here. New York, I have called them gamers in the past, and I use it in a bad way and in a good way, and tonight's a good way. Because sometimes when they're playing opponents that are lower than them, they're going to play down to their opponent. But tonight, they are kind of fulfilling the promise of the team they are supposed to be, which is coming up big the entire game long and coming through in the clutch.
Yeah, and even up by 3, I'm interested to see what, not say will change, but what will get tighter here for New York. Not in terms of the way they're playing, but even the lineups and the rosters. They do generally make a few switches on their D-lines. We saw still a very good D-line, but some different faces kind of merging the two, and I wonder if things get a little bit tighter here again with John Randolph on the O-line, what that's going to do for personnel other than Josue Aloro moving over.
You talked about that single step, and really it's an emotional game. We talk about momentum and kind of the myth of momentum in a lot of ways, but when it is valid, in my opinion, is when your team doesn't believe they have a chance. So somebody on this D-line for DC has a chance to reinstill belief in this team and reinstill confidence.
Rowan McDonald, Christian Boxley, Ben Ort, all out there on this first D point in the fourth quarter. And yet, for the most part, no matter what DC has done defensively, New York has been able to handle it. Another big night for Ryan Osgar. Not as big as perhaps many expected, but he's been very super solid. Weinberg in the red zone, and New York stays perfect near the goal line. The Empire now 13 for 13 when close to the end zone, and the Empire back up by 4.
Well, you talked earlier, BJ, about the depth of this Empire team, and they are being asked with their O-line tonight, what is too much to lose? No Jeff Babbitt, no John Lithio, no Jack Williams at this point in the fourth quarter. What is too much? But John Randolph and Ben Yott, as we mentioned, it is a trickle-down effect. What will the D-line, that pressure that the New York Empire defense usually provides in that fourth quarter, and Anthony said it, pressure, pressure, pressure. They know that they can do it in the fourth. They've done it for multiple years now, but having lost so many pieces, and if Jack can't return to this game, where will be the trickle-down on this D-line?
And DC now is in a precarious position because they've been crossing people over the D-line.
Yeah.
So this offense is liable to get tired at some point and could lead to just random turnovers that we're not used to seeing.
Second straight O point for Thomas Edmonds. It appears Christian Boxley is going to play D the rest of the night. He has not been on the first couple O points here in this fourth quarter.
And that's the risk, right? But Darryl Stanley knows you can't wait for your depth to just come through. You have to make a change now, and you have to take some risks.
Edmonds, back to Nissen. Antoine Davis hunting. Been an emotional couple of days for Antoine Davis, who's got family in Maui. Cousins of his were not far from the flames. Their house, fortunately, was not burned down, but Antoine, with Hawaiian roots, certainly feeling the emotions and devastation of all that happened in Hawaii over the past few days.
This defense is in sync right now for New York and knowing exactly how they want to play it, reading the situation. And DC's doing a great job of working through it, but it's taking time, and it's taking a toll.
Too much time. This point began with 9:34 remaining in the quarter, and it took nearly 90 seconds, 88 to be exact.
You can see Tyler Monroe walking out almost with his hands on his hips. That can tell you that's exhausting. And that's so motivating as a defensive line. You can't always win, you can't always get a turnover, but that was an A-plus defensive point.
Yeah, how often do we say the name Shankalati? We don't really say that name much. And if you're going to have, and they're not playing a rabbit, but with you have multiple players, that being Antoine and Shank, in that backspace, attacking that handler space and putting pressure there, yeah, if you're going to have Shankalati be the guy who's going to run the hardest and the most for a minute and a half of your game in the fourth quarter, then you're going to win the game. That is the formula, and that is the depth that we continue to harp on with this New York team.
Jack Williams is back on the field for New York.
Here he might actually try to see an attempt for the sideline trap, but it goes out of bounds pretty quickly, skips out.
The last 2 times that Jack has gone out with an injury in previous games, they've immediately sent him deep. So I'm wondering if that's going to happen again. It doesn't happen on purpose.
He's a super dump right now. First sideline trap of the night. Looking into the lights, Williams able to read that hammer back in his own end zone.
No, there is Benyat on the field.
And he's deep downfield. He's going deep right now.
I mean, I think you let everybody go deep if you're DC, with the exception of Benyat.
Precious seconds bleeding off the clock. And yet, look, if DC could get 1 turn and 1 break and make it a 2-goal game, all of a sudden things would tense up considerably. But as long as the Empire keep playing, keep away, they are unbeatable.
The magic number last year, the championship game against Chicago, 3 minutes and 40 seconds. And that is what won them the 2022 AUDL championship. And yeah, if they take 2.5, 3 minutes off the clock here, DC is going to have a long way back.
McCutcheon was asking for a foul, didn't get one. Comes around to set the mark on Randolph. Already 90 seconds burned off the clock on this point. And now the deep shot goes. Yacht chased by Ja, and Yacht makes the adjustment, floats it for Randolph. New York continues to cook.
They are just so comfortable. And we thought, pregame, what's going to happen with Jeff Abbott leaving? What's going to happen with John Lithgow not in the lineup? And we're talking in the booth, right? DC has had a fighting chance in every single big moment against New York. But what we're seeing here is a galvanized New York team that's saying, you know what? We can still play our system. We can play all well together. We don't have to change anything about ourselves. We don't have to do anything different. And it's somehow, almost in a way, could they be playing better because of it, because they love the adversity? You would never want to just sit Jeff Babbitt out or John Lithgow. You'd want them on the field. And if you're the opponent, you surely would want to play without them for New York. But tonight, this is maybe the best performance we've ever seen out of New York.
Well, I'll quote Benyat, I love winning. The man loves, and I say that all these players hate to lose and love to win, but there is something that is infectious on that sideline. You saw it against Colorado when they went down, against Salt Lake when that game was close, that he just loves to win in a way that the best in the game do.
Real urgent moments here for the DC Breeze. Half a quarter to play, a 4-goal deficit against an Empire team that's only turned the disc over 4 times all night. And a careless drop in the backfield. Cole Jurek fumbles it away. Ben Katz picks it up with a high stall count, floats it to space, and it's an Empire score for Mike Drost in his 20th career playoff game. That's more than anyone else in AUDL history. And that might be the dagger on DC's desperate hopes here in New York.
We talked about the energy battle. New York has been winning it all game long. They have the depth. In those mistakes, it could be that it's just a one-off, but you got to think that New York's constant pressure is going to pay dividends, and it has throughout this game. DC's been trying to throw the kitchen sink at New York the entire time in the second half, and it hasn't worked.
All-time AUDL winning streaks. The Toronto Rush won 30 straight games before they ever lost. 2013 and 2014, certainly a different era of the AUDL then versus now. What the Empire have done, surpassing the best of the Dallas Roughnecks teams in 16 and 17, surpassing the 19 to 21 mark. And my goodness, they will tie Toronto if they can go all the way. With Minnesota currently leading by 4 midway through the 4th in St. Paul, and the Empire up here. If these results stand, the semifinal matchups would be New York against Austin in the 1-4 matchup, and Salt Lake, the West champs, would basically be a de facto road team in their first ever championship weekend appearance against the Minnesota wind chill.
Yeah, I don't want to look too far ahead too quickly, but watching that Austin-Atlanta game last night, you think that the Empire game plan against a new opponent in Austin will be very similar to what they did against Atlanta. We know they're going to make some big plays. They want to force big plays, and Kyle Hinkie and Evan Swiatek, and we're going to make them beat us. It's going to be a war of attrition the same way that they beat Atlanta pretty handily here earlier in the season.
Still shaking my head about that Austin-Atlanta game as Mox's deep shot pursued by Jurek out of his reach.
That all-time winning streak record, Evan, Bo Kittredge and the East Division pretty much handle that entire list when you talk about ADL history.
Empire D-line going to work. And now Charlie Hoppus says, we'll get the O-line on the field. Timeout taken with just under 5 minutes to play.
It smiles for Marquez Bradley because why? Marquez caught it on the sideline, and for the third time tonight, Charlie Hoppus says, Marquez, you're too close to me. We gotta, let's call this D. That's it.
Yeah, the D-line thought they were going to get free reign to run down the field.
But I think that's also a testament to the respect that Anthony Nunez and Charlie Hoppus have for Daryl Stanley. To say that even though we're up by 5 with 4:52 left to get in the game, we have to make sure that we execute completely down the stretch. If we have the timeouts, we will use them. Even though the situation, again, would merit that you'd want to keep them, you want to have them later, knowing you're going up by 6. Now, I don't think there's a magic number in the league once you're up by this many at this time, you know you won the game, but 5 with under 4 to play feels pretty destined to me.
Knowing these guys on New York, I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to try to run out the clock here and just play some super dump. Move the disc around the field, not take any risks. We saw Daryl Stanley on the screen earlier, hands on the hips. I mean, this is a game where you're looking for answers. I think every coach has been there. When you just haven't been able to find anything that's going to work. And I just think the cements here. We talk about New York stars in the past, but look at the depth. Just great performances from this offensive line.
I mean, we are seeing one of the historic offensive, possession-oriented performances in the history of this league, dating back to 2012. And the crazy thing is that it's not a totally calm, pristine night. There has been some wind to deal with. Benyat deep again, beating McDonald. Empire by 6. And New York can taste it.
A little bit of the air certainly has left that free sideline. On that play offensively, was there a single DC Breeze defender who could have made a play on any of those discs? It just seemed like it was too easy that time.
The focus that this offense has had throughout the entire game. I mean, you just don't see it from this New York squad that often. They go through periods of lulls. We talked about the beginning of the game, the key was not to lull. A complete game so far from this New York team.
And maybe that Callahan, too. When you talk about galvanizing things, New York, you're right. Over the course of 48 minutes, all season long, they have made. That's why Philly took them to OT. It's why DC took them to OT. There have been moments, and they've had some issues. And maybe having that galvanizing moment in the first quarter in a way that they just did this year was something that kind of woke them up and shocked the system.
Coming off the field, that last point, Ryan Osgar waved goodbye, literally, to the DC sideline. The Breeze have been a worthy adversary, but it feels like they just did not have enough tonight. And it's crazy that New York has been this good without the likely 2023 MVP and another super underrated star in John Lithio. Babbitt and Lithio out. They both practiced on Wednesday. They both expected to play, but Babbitt dealing with some lingering concussion symptoms. Apparently, Lithio tweaked his back in pregame warm-ups and got scratched. A lot of teams lose 2 players of that caliber, and it changes everything for the negative, but New York has just kept on chugging.
I just think it shows you so much about their mentality as a team. Their ability to work through this, knowing to trust their depth.
Mox again connecting long for Tyler Monroe. But still work to do and precious time ticking away. Crossfield hammer to a wide open Andrew Roy. Under 3 minutes left. in a 5-goal game.
There is something to be said of that experience too, relying on the fact that you've done it so many times before. And the pieces that they've added to this team this year, that Jeff Babbitt, you can have to say part of winning in the AUDL was about recruiting too. He, Cat Stevens, Jack Williams, Ryan Oscar, they get on their phones and the texting and the call, maybe they call, I don't know, Zooming, Skyping. They find people and look at who they added this year. Guys who haven't been there yet, but can certainly get there. Jeff Holm, Brett Tan, Josue Laurel coming back. And of course, Josue part of that 2019 season, but they haven't been a part of the Ryan Oscar experience yet. So adding those kind of pieces over the offseason, it doesn't make the big waves the way that, yes, the Ryan Oscars or the Jack Williams or the Bo Kittredge, Yacht, Babbitt, those pickups have in the past. When you have so many stars, it is hard to make a big deal out of some of those offseason signings. But, I mean, Jeff Holm, was any player added to a second D line who was as good as Jeff Holm?
He's put in the work, too, in the offseason.
Yeah.
He really, it's a testament to his hard work, his ability. You get another 6'5" player who can throw like him, who can defend like him, and I still think he has room to grow. He has been so close to some game-changing blocks himself. And he is maybe, man, 18, 19 on this roster.
Well, you look at the sideline, Matt LeBar. How many 20s is Matt LeBar omitted from in a playoff game in this situation?
They're tough decisions for every team. I mean, DC, surprisingly, sitting down Jeff Odach and Luke Rafus for this particular game. Tough decisions every week for the top teams in the league. These are certainly two of the best. But it is looking like it's going to be New York, Salt Lake, Minnesota, and Austin. The championship weekend. Ben Yacht did it again. Not in, landing on the line. Bumped a couple times by Merriman. Still no whistle. Gets it right back, and maybe a spike or two coming. 3 fakes, perhaps. Ben Yacht.
He learned his lesson.
One of the league's biggest villains, and yet he's one of the league's greatest weapons, and there's no doubt about that statement at all.
Well, there is one stadium around the league where he is not the biggest villain. This is the one stadium, the one place that Ben Yacht is not the biggest villain in the league. But yeah, he just revels in it. I mean, Ben Yacht revels in these big moments, especially. We talked about that move between Babbitt and Yacht, that switch last season. 4 games to 6 games in, where Yacht went on that D-line. And it wasn't even a shift of mentality for him. He wants to win in every aspect, in every matchup, in every moment. And little things throughout the season, like when Orion Cable in the 4th quarter here at home. That game was already over, but Orion got the best of him. And Ben Yacht kind of puts that in that part of his brain that motivates him and pushes him. And you surely saw on that play, if A.J. Merriman is going to match up with Yacht probably read that wonderful Washington Post article too. He knows that A.J. Merriman is well, not only a star in this league already, but potentially a future superstar in this league, and he wants to take it to that next generation of stars already.
Almost 700 receiving yards this game.
Again, not in the end zone, Malks. With less than a minute to go. Ben Yacht's really had an epic game tonight. 8 goals, 3 assists. He had the 1 turn, but he's plus 10 and over 800 total yards.
I think everybody saw that switch they made for Jeff Babbitt and Ben Yacht last year as a good thing to make the offense function and Ben Yacht to be a playmaker in the defense. I don't think I've ever seen Ben Yacht play better. I think this is his best performance in the playoffs we've ever seen.
Yeah, the only other contender really would be that 2021 Atlanta, where he made every big play you could have possibly made. But yeah, today it's even cleaner. Today it's even tighter. It's tight.
Well, DC won by 4 back in 2016 to earn the right to go to Toronto. New York had the surprising upset. That was in the monsoon, Brian. Remember that?
No scores in the 4th quarter.
It was one of the wildest quarters of Ultimate we've ever seen. There were 36 turnovers for the Breeze in that monsoon. Neither team scored in the 4th, 19 turns, multiple timeouts. It was unreal. And of course, last year, Ben Yacht, buzzer beater. A few more yards for Ben. The DC Breeze felt like they had the pieces, they felt like they had the chemistry. The narrative certainly with Daryl Stanley coming down the stretch of his coaching career. And look, they had some moments tonight, but they have run into an all-time team. The Empire, with an AUDL record-breaking low, 4 turnovers with 15 seconds left.
And they can afford to even turn it over once more, and they'll be fine.
All-time record is 6. Empire in the postseason doing it again. Jack Williams throws it into the crowd, and without Jeff Babbitt and without John Lithio, the New York championship train just keeps on rolling. Back to championship weekend.
An absolutely dominant performance by New York. A masterclass in offense, a masterclass in mentality in a playoff game against your rival. They know how to bring it on the biggest stage.
DC certainly, I think they won the offseason. They have one of the absolute best coaches, not only in the game today, but in the history of this league. And they have the depth. And I thought going into the season, they were the second best team in this league. And if this score had flipped and DC won this game, I think they would have been 2023 AUDL champion. But instead, to the point, yeah, we're in the Empire Polo, but this is an all-time team in the New York Empire, and the word they were using, and I know coaches and owners, they fear it, but the word is dynasty. And that is what New York has been intent on building, and this is another chapter in that.
Ryan, what comes to your mind looking at Daryl Stanley shaking hands perhaps for the last time in the AUDL?
Bittersweet. I love coaching against that man. Like I said, he's been a friend and a foe, and he's poured everything he's had into coaching and just brought up a community in DC, brought a lot of confidence to that team, and taught his players a lot. I'm sure this is bittersweet for him. You know, he's ready to walk away, but something tells me he might be back in a few years.
Well, he's got a lot of other stuff in life going on, a family business that he's preparing to take over. Daryl is a really big name in the world of IT. He was involved in overseeing the entire Democratic Convention a handful of years ago from an IT standpoint. But look at this efficiency tonight. I mean, 7 of 8 on break chances, 15 for 15 on red zone. The one Huck error. I mean, DC had the one break. It was a Callahan. It was the only uncharacteristic mistake, and 4 turnovers in 48 minutes for the Empire. A historic performance against one of the best defenses the league has to offer.
It's just incredible. We've been saying it for so long. New York knows how to bring their best in the biggest moments. They continue to do so. It's incredible to see a team stay this hungry after so much success.
Now the question becomes Jeff Babbitt's status and John Lithio's status for the Austin Soul matchup